My parents were farmers, dairy farmers, fruit farmers. They tried a little of everything. My father bought 80 acres and then added onto it to where he had 120 acres, about 2 miles on County Road 62. He had milk cows, pretty large dairy for that time, which was around, I think he ran about 40 to 45 mama cows. Also did custom hay baling for all over Washington County, even went into as far as St. Paul a few times. He also had grapes, he had strawberries, whatever it took to make a living. Had a few chickens houses, had 3 chicken houses, one of them 500, one of them 700, and one of them as much as 1,000. I helped with the milking, I helped with the custom hay baling, I helped whatever it was, and had a good time, enjoyed it. We had surge milking machines, and there at the end we were milking 6, more than 2 at a time. So pretty modern dairy, and one of the first in the areas to go grade A. Most people were milking grade B, which was the old Pet Milk Company, and so it was a pretty modern setup. I don't remember who supplied the chickens, but there were wooden floors in the chicken house, which we would clean those chicken houses out in the spring and bring in strawberry people to pick strawberries who'd live in the chicken houses. Well, and they were usually contracted through the Cherokee Nation, Indian Nation, and they would come over and stay about a month. The church was a major part of our family. We respected the work, but if we wanted to play, we played hard and we worked hard. My father really never grew up as far as having a good time. He was a busy man, and a good example would be on fair time. We would go to the fair and he'd ride everything with us. Matter of fact, to this day, I don't like to ride things because it was overdone with me when I was young. And he would go out with us on different things like Halloween. And I always wondered, why did he do that? Well, we'd turn over a few outhouses and we'd do a few things, but we didn't do anything to destroy. And he was always with us. And I know he's old and be going with us, but he was watching us and making sure that we didn't do anything too bad. We'd wire a few gates together or something. Well, there wasn't much here. I started the first grade. I'm one of the few to start the first grade at Farmington in the schools. Bethel Grove consolidated with Farmington about the time I started the first grade. But Farmington was basically just 4 stores and a post office. And they were private, family-owned stores. And as far as what went on when I was real young, we'd go to Prairie Grove to the movie on Saturday night. We'd buy our feed and fertilizer in Prairie Grove and also in Fayetteville. And so we were kind of halfway between, so kind of give business to both towns, I guess you'd say. Delance Phillips had one. He pretty well had most anything. Mrs. Neal had another store, and Mrs. White had the store to the west, furthest to the west, which is still there. Mrs. Neal's store is still there, the building. Delance Phillips' store's gone. And then there was another store at the other end was run by Beavers. So they were just family stores. Of course, Stark's brother nursery was a pretty good sized business in this town. They did business, catalog business, and then they really didn't do business with local people. I remember that I always wondered why they burn those good trees at the end of the year. When they didn't sell them, they'd burn what. And they had a large warehouse in the middle of the field over where Southwind's development is today, and the railroad went through there. And then it was turned into a chicken house, a two-story chicken house. And of course, one of the memories I have is cleaning chicken litter out of those chicken houses and dropping it down into the first floor where we could pick it up. So it was kind of an unusual chicken house. When I taught BOAG at Lincoln, I was required to live in the district. And I taught there 3 years. And then came back to the farm, which I bought the farm in 1956, about 2 years after I got out of high school. Well, first grade, starting at the beginning, the first grade, Miss Brown, who later taught some of my sons, was first grade teacher. I remember her pulling my hair. I remember how neat she was as far as grammar and all. And my second grade teacher was a Mrs. Starr, and then the third, and I had a tragedy when I was in between the first and second year. I lost some fingers as a little kid, and so they treated me a little special, which they probably shouldn't have. And Mrs. Beckett, Bill Beckett's mother, was my third grade teacher. And I didn't know for sure I was going to pass the third grade, because it was S's and U's, and I got a few U's in her grade. High school was my interest was more in sports than probably that it should have been, but we had a good basketball team. We went to the state tournament. I represented the smaller schools in the area and went to Barton Coliseum in Little Rock. We never had seen anything that big before, and so the tip-off, we got the ball, went down and scored 2 points, and it was a wrong goal. So we were a little too excited to be in the state tournament. We got beat bad. Classmates are pretty all. I only had 12 total in my class. Of course, we had a few classes, but usually you were in the grade level with your peers. But most all of them left the area. They went to other places, and the opportunities wasn't here. I decided to try to farm. I milked cows and a couple of years, and then I decided maybe I ought to go on and get an education, and went to school. And the interesting thing happened in about 2 months after we got married in 1957. I was activated into the was in the National Guard and got activated into the Little Rock crisis. Little Rock, in the middle of the night, about 1 o'clock, they called us out. I was milking cows and hauling milk to Federal Milk Company. What was I going to do? They were going to send us to Little Rock. So they asked for volunteers. I didn't volunteer, and they said, well, you'll only going to be we're going to pick about 8 guys, send down for 2 weeks, and then you'll come back, and then everybody will take a turn. What happened was the federal government federalized us. Those guys that volunteered first stayed 9 months. So, and I tell people that it's one of the better things that ever happened to me, because I was trying to go to university. I was milking cows and had 30 acres of grapes that I was taking care of. And the first sergeant said, you know, if you'll just drive by as you take the milk to Federal Milk Company and wave as we have openings, as we meet the beginning with, I'll catch you there. And I made $15 a day from the National Guard. I never made that kind of money before in my life. So I was feeling pretty good. I guess I ought to talk a little bit about church, maybe. The Little Elm Baptist Church was kind of the center of our life. You know, we, as teenagers and as a family, when my little brother died, why, then it became more important to us. And my parents were really changed their life. So basically when that happened, I had the total responsibility of the cows and taking care of the farm, and they just kind of was gone for a while. But church was always very important to our family and held us together, and it still is today. It's an important part of it. I know that maybe things are changing a little bit. I would encourage everybody to stay with an organized church. There was the Walkers, there was the Schultz, there was just about everybody in that community was part of it, and most everybody took part in everything that there was to do. If there was a marriage, if there was a funeral, they had dinners for them. And one thing that always happened in the community that doesn't happen anymore is chivalries. You may not know what exactly I'm talking about, but when a couple would get married, the community would get together and they'd try to catch them when they weren't expecting it. And the men would have shotguns and they'd shoot it around the house. And the guy would try to run off. The new husband, because part of the ceremony was that he'd get thrown in the creek. And he was expected to furnish cigars for the men, and the women would get candy bars. When I got married, they chivalried us, and we were in an old house on the farm that I live in now. And a storm came up. A large oak tree blew over on one of the church members' cars, and we have a spring in front of the house, and I did get thrown in the creek. So, and my dad, he always entered in this. He brought dynamite and set it off at the chivalry. One of the things I do when I got old enough was go into town, of course, and Fayetteville was the main place. But as far as before, when we were in our early teens, we'd get together and have. Some of them had horses we could ride. But some of them had the Williams, which Pop Williams' family. There was 4 of those boys, and they had a mule that nobody was able to ride, and then you'd always get bucked off. We did possum hunting, coon hunting, and actually kept the hides and put them on boards and sold the hides. Just things, we made our own fun. We swimming in the creek. The Illinois River, Slick Rock, we called it over there, which still was a favorite swimming pool. Most everybody beat there on Saturdays. So there wasn't any problem having something to do. Like I said, church was a big part of the parents, and they'd get together and talk, visit, have dinners for people that had something special, and kind of same type deal we do today, except now it's a lot bigger. Just visited. Well, it was the whole, actually 200 acres on the south side of 62 where, man, it was kind of John Lawson's idea, and he wanted some investors, so we formed a corporation with the three of us, John Lawson, Gary Sturman, and myself, and tried to buy the place, and did buy the place. For years, Farmington couldn't develop on the south side of 62 because it was all one farm, and a lot of people had tried to buy it. So we decided that once we got agreement to buy it, the secret was getting something started, and we sold the IGA, the basic plot, and then we all agreed that we'd all start building at least one or two houses on our own. We'd buy those lots and build them, and so that's kind of how we got started. And then once the IGA come in, well then Sonic was interested, and by that time we'd sold enough to pretty well get rid of our debt, and then we started going back in debt and building streets. American way of capitalism that works, and a wonderful thing really turned out to be. We thought it'd take longer too once we get started. The way it worked out real fast, and the partners were good partners, and they pretty well was interested in it developing instead of personal. I had taught school for 11 years, and I saw an ad in the paper, said Haley Sales Company, which they had stores in Rogers and Noel, Missouri, and Fayetteville, and the Fayetteville store was for sale. So I answered the ad. I thought, well, I always want to be in business for myself. So I went to Mr. Haley. Mr. Haley was a good businessman. He had owned a car dealership in Rogers, but he wasn't a very good, didn't have a very good personality in my opinion. And he pretty well run me off. He said, I've already sold it. He said, I know your dad, and my dad did business with us. He said, he beats me down to nothing when he trades. And he said, pretty well sent me back. And he said, I got a guy that's going to buy it. And deal's already made. So I forgot about it, and about 3 months later, Ford Motor Company called me and said, we'd like for you to come back and talk to Mr. Haley. And I said, well, he said I need $50,000. I said, I might come up with $5,000 or $6,000. And he said, for you, he'll finance you. He said, he'll carry the note. And I said, well, he had a buyer. Won't he carry his note? No, he won't carry his note, but he'll carry yours. So anyway, he gave me a chance to pay it out. And I think he had five employees. Today we've got over 150 employees, so it's grown. But he was a good businessman, but like I said, while I was there one day, Mr. Haley, there was a man come in and bought some parts, and when he came in the door, he flipped his cigarette kind of out in the bushes there, and Mr. Haley saw him do that. He was looking through it. He made that customer go up and pick that cigarette butt up. So I always thought, if I get this business, I'm going to be nicer to people. I'm going to appreciate their business. Maribel Williams, my wife, has been the brains of the outfit. When she graduated from university, she graduated with high honors. I graduated. She ran the office. When she left, they hired 3 or 4 people in her place. She helped make the decisions. She left the selling to me and my people and all of that, but she managed the money and the books and everything. So she has been an asset, and just good Lord bless me with her. Doug is the oldest. He is a manager now, and he has a degree in agriculture, and he does a very good job of managing. Wade is the second oldest boy, and he's an attorney. So we got a built-in attorney, and he doesn't get paid too good from us, but anyway, maybe he does enough else to make a living. And the number 3 son is, he has a degree in electrical engineering, worked for E-Systems in Texas for several years, and then came back and got in the apartment business for a few years, and now he's actually working for Williams Tractor. So, and then the number 4 son runs our Rogers store. He's Dwight Williams, and his wife is one of the principals here at the school. So they're all live close, been blessed by having them within a few miles of each other. And but one thing they learned, as I did when I was young, was to work. They had to work. When the larger grocery stores, and then the fast food chains came in, that was the beginning of some of the better growth. And then I always thought that they didn't have enough tax basis to do some of the things they need to do, but that's beginning to change now with all the houses. And of course, we've not only been involved with Southwind, we were involved with Twin Falls, which was Maribel's old home place. And so the quality of the houses in this area have really gone up in the last few years. I think Farmington needs maybe some manufacturing, or maybe some larger businesses, which it's going to come. It's going to come. But one thing that Farmington has always had is a closeness, and I pretty well knew as a kid growing up what the neighbors were, and involved in their problems, and when they died, we helped dig the graves. As teenagers, we'd whatever it took to be good neighbors, and there was, I guess, best word for it, there was love of the community. It's still there, but it's more into the school than it was as a community then. At that point, it was a community. All the new schools, if people haven't seen the new high school and the new art center and the gymnasium, you'd be proud. The school is, when we built the first gym here at the school, boys my age, juniors, seniors in high school, we dug the foundation. We helped with it, if no other reason, to get out of school. And so the quality things are being done in Farmington is a lot better than it used to be. I mean, instead of just doing things halfway, they're doing it right now as far as the school is concerned. I think it's a lot better than it was, but I think it's still got that. They know who you are. Most everybody, they're in the police and the firemen and all. Well, talking about the fire department, they're pretty good, and I've been involved with them a few times by burning brush at the wrong time, and I appreciate them. They like I say, they take time to know their people, and they know that people are not doing things. It's beautiful out here. It's good people. If they want to get involved with the community and the churches and the school, it's a fine community. If they want to be left alone, well, they can be left alone. But it's basically a loving community that cares about their people. And one thing about my dad, whenever someone moved into the community, he would go by and introduce himself and see if he could help. And he was serious. And enough of us, we don't even know our neighbors, like we should. So I think Farmington's a place where you can know your neighbors and you can love your neighbors. My favorite thing about Farmington is the fact that people care for each other, they're interested in each other. You have a freedom to do what you want to do, but yet be part of that community. I guess just being part of something that's something you can love, something you can care about.